Okay, guys, this is a video on population pyramids, specific to Chapter 2, because population pyramids tell us a lot about a country's population and what it actually looks like in the demographic transition. So when we take a look at this population pyramid, there's a couple of things to remind us of. So first of all, the right side of the population pyramid is females in the population. The left side is males. That population is broken up into age cohorts of 5 years. So, for example, this cohort down here would be 0 to 4 years old, and then we'd have 5 to 9 and 10 to 14. Etc. Okay, and as we move up, those cohorts go in those 5-year ranges. This axis down here, the horizontal axis, tells us the percentage of the population that falls in that range. So usually in the population pyramid, they might write like 2.4. That means 2.4% of the population are females between 0 and 4, and then it might be 2.1 on this side. Same thing about males. Okay, the vertical axis is age, and as you'll notice, as you go up the population pyramid, usually there are fewer people at the top than there are on the bottom, but not always. It depends on what stage of the demographic transition you are. The angle of these cohorts here, we call this slope. Right. So when we notice that there's a very steep slope in a population pyramid, that tells us that as people get older, they are dying, or they have died at a quicker rate. If we notice a very wide base down here, we know that this is very wide. Right, it tells us that there's a pretty high birth rate, and if we notice a very narrow top, it tells us that there was a pretty high death rate. The higher the vertical axis, the longer people are living. So, if we took in this, this would be 15 to 19, 20 to 24, 25 to 29, 30 to 34, 35 to 39, 40 to 44, 45 to 49. So this top one would only be 50 to 54. This is a very young population, right? So that means that you don't live very long on this particular place. So that would tell me that they are in a very early stage of demographic transition, right? If this population pyramid went up much higher, let's say, you got into like the 90 to 94 range at the top, that would tell us people are living a lot longer. Sometimes you notice that there are kinks or bulges in the population pyramid. A kink, if it would happen to go in here for some reason, at a particular point, that would tell us that in that cohort there was a low birth rate. Either that, or there may have been a high, death rate related with that particular cohort of people. We don't necessarily know why from the pyramid, but knowing the place and knowing a little bit of history about it can help fill us in. Okay. Same thing if there would happen to be a big bulge out here like that. That could tell us that there was a pretty high birth rate with that particular group of people in that particular cohort. So again, we have to understand the history of the place. To let us know. Remember, there are no more stage 1s in the world. Okay, so when we look at these population pyramids, every single one of them are going to represent a country in stage 2 or deeper in the demographic transition. Oh, one more thing, can't forget to mention this. Dependencies, right? So we have our young dependencies, which are people that are not economically active at a young age, and that's 14 and older. And then we have our old dependencies, which actually aren't even represented on this population pyramid. Our old dependencies are people who are 65 and up. So that would be here, somewhere up here. So those are our dependency ranges. And in between, between these dependencies, we call these peoples economically active. Okay, so and that lets us know, again, a lot of economically active people in a place lets us know, this is a thriving economy, and can help us identify the stage of demographic transition that a country is in. A really high dependency ratio, a really old dependency ratio, a very young dependency ratio can also help us identify some problems in a place, and we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so let's take a look now at some examples of population pyramids and how it equates to the demographic transition model. So what do different age sex structures and population pyramids look like as countries progress? Okay, so first of all, we have to remember that there are no stage 1 countries in the world anymore because they have all moved into at least the industrial economy. But a stage 1 country would have this really sharp concave slope, right? It comes in, has a very wide base at the bottom, indicating this is a very high birth rate and a very low life expectancy, and people start to die as they get a little bit older, even simply just into their teens. A really sharp drop off here. I mean, there's things there killing people. Okay, so there's a very high birth rate and high death rate and a very short life expectancy. Stage 2. This you notice that is a little more straighter on the slope, right? Still a high birth rate. The death rate is falling. As we can see, it doesn't drop off as sharply as it does over here. So it's kind of going up on more of a triangular life. Still shorter life expectancy. And this is where most countries, like Haiti and a lot of countries in Africa, are still in this stage 2 of the demographic transition. Stage 3 and stage 4, again, we pointed out, it's kind of confusing what's the difference between the two of them because they really kind of look the same, right? The difference here is so what we really want to look at is the economically active, right? So here in this stage 3 country, we've got economically active. Here is the young dependents, and right about here are the old dependents. And you'll notice there's a pretty big difference, not a big difference, but there's a noticeable difference between those two. So in the old dependents and the young dependency line. And then there's this kind of really sharp drop off life expectancy there. That's a pretty good indication there that this is a stage 3 country. At one point there was a pretty high death rate, and then the birth rate exploded, and we get these kind of straight sides on the sides. And there's a difference between the old dependency and the young dependency. Stage 4 countries, we look at the old dependents are right about here, and the young dependents are right about here. It's much less of a difference, and you get these really big concave sides of those people that are economically active. So there's that bulge there, and that means that people that are economically active are healthy, they're living longer, and we still have a relatively solid base, indicating that they're probably in ZPG or zero population growth. They're replacing the people that die, basically. Okay, so we noticed in stage 4 we also have a very long life expectancy. It means people are living longer. They're healthier, and we might start to see this dependency ratio increase, either at the older dependency in particular, but there is a dependency ratio particularly at the high end. Okay. Then we could also have the stage 5 country, right? And because this has been accepted, and in that stage 5 country, we start to see and I'm just going to use green. We'll start to see a population pyramid that is very wide at the top and then starts to come in at this base up here. So something that kind of looks like that would be a stage 5 country. Okay, and it's because there's a very narrow base in there, indicating they're not really having as many children. The older dependency line, is pretty large, and there's a big difference here between the young dependents and the old dependents, and at the bottom. Okay, so that's at stage 5, and this has a serious dependency issue as well, particularly on the old dependents. There's not going to be enough people to replace them. Okay, so let's get back over here and let's talk a little bit about some of the problems or some issues related to population statistics and population growth that countries can face. Okay, so a little bit on the issues. Okay, so first of all, talk about that dependency ratio. Right? So if you have a whole bunch of old or young dependents, either one of those is a problem in itself. Too many old dependents means who's going to take the jobs, who's going to fill these jobs as people get older. Is it going to start to be immigrants, as we're seeing in Germany and Japan, or is there going to need to be there's got to be some way to increase this young population. Young population has a problem as well, is that you're going to get into demographic momentum. A lot of young people are going to continue to have kids, and they're going to continue to grow the population, and this population is going to grow even as those young people get older. There's also this problem of competition for jobs, and in some countries where there is strong competition, really high rapid growth rates, sometimes we see a lot of out-migration. That has a lot to do with Zelensky's model of the demographic transition. So each of these situations of dependency, either old or young, creates challenges for a country. With a lot of young people, we're going to have to address education. A lot of old people, you're going to have to address pensions and something like Social Security as they start to get older. Okay, it also brings up the issue of countries with really low rates of natural increase. Can they create some pro-natal policies? Can they create some things to get people to thinking about having kids? At the same time, if you have a high rate of natural increase, we think about some anti-natal policies, right, against having kids, and some pro-natal ones we looked at, tax rebates, money, incentives to have kids, lots of time off. Denmark does, a year off for moms and dads while holding their job to try to increase the natural population. Countries with high natural increases, our best examples are India and China. China went to the one-child policy for a while, and it was almost too effective. And then other places, find ways to punish people. Again, higher taxes or things like that. There's also just simply with high NR and anti-natal is one of the best ways to do this is to educate women. Because we know as women become more educated and have access to contraceptives and understand how to use them and understand, their role in having children and take more power and ownership of that, we know that the birth rate will fall. Also, educated women tend to want to work, and we know that working women have fewer kids. So a lot of countries have tried to focus on women in these policies as well, to try to decrease the rate of natural increase. Okay, so one final piece there, one final thing related to the population, and that is Malthus. I think we pretty much understand Malthus. I think we're pretty good with that. But Malthus was under this impression that the demographic transition was going to lead to a catastrophe, because we had food production moving on this kind of linear pattern, and we had population growth moving exponentially, and eventually here we would run out of food and there'd be mass disaster. We know that didn't happen because Malthus didn't take into account human ingenuity and the Industrial Revolution and being able to build food. Neo-Malthusians still think that this situation is going to happen, and they promote this idea of zero population growth. And their point has a lot to do with the depletion of resources, and they preach sustainability. sustain our resources. So the new Malthusians are out there. Still think it's going to happen, but not for the reasons that Malthus did, because obviously we know he was wrong. So there's a quick review on population. Hope this was helpful.